What you want is for people to see you, see your blog, see your logo, and immediately know that you are the expert in whatever. And if you can kind of create that kind of brand consistency, it's going to make it so much easier to grow a loyal following.
That was Tessa Arias, and we're talking about the Food Blog Success Summit on episode 39 of the Chopped podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today for the 39th episode of the Chopped podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Each week, my hope is to share with you thoughts, interviews, stories, everything related to food blogging so we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today's guest is Tessa Arias of the site Handle the Heat and also Food Blog Academy. Tessa joined me today. You know, she's actually been on the show several times now, and I'm really happy every time I've had the chance to talk with her. Today, she's coming on the show so that she and I can kind of give an overview of what happened at the first ever Food Blog Success Summit. We scheduled that for the day before Chopped conference, and we thought it would just be good to share with you some of the themes that we saw as a result of that day. You know, I think we all went into that day with not really knowing what to expect, but we were really hopeful. I mean, of course, we put some work into planning it, so it was kind of like hope on steroids, but still, it was a little bit of unknown what was actually going to come out of it. And I think we all agreed as we left that it turned out to be an amazing day. We all walked away with such valuable information and insights, not just from the people on the panel, but also from everybody in the group that shared some thoughts about blogging and contributed ideas to the people who were on the hot seat. I think we felt like a pretty tight-knit group by the time we left for the day. I was really grateful to have been a part of it and thankful to both Tessa and Catherine Taylor of the site Cookie and Gate who were on the panel with me. So we really had a great time, and I think, you know, like I say, we learned a lot. So I think feedback is so valuable, and I just wanted to share this quote with you by Elon Musk, the guy with Tesla. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I just think that's such an important thing to remember, and it's not always easy, but to get some feedback from other bloggers like this was really kind of a different experience, and I think it was all pretty incredible. So, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to dig into today's interview. Today's intro shout out is to Chef Sarah Elizabeth, who listened to the Chop podcast on a recent commute. It was long enough for her to get in 2.25 episodes. That's impressive, Sarah. I'm with you too. I'm a big fan of listening to podcasts while I drive. So everyone, in honor of Sarah, get out your keys, rev up those engines, turn on the volume, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Tessa Arias of the site Handle the Heat and the Food Blog Academy on the show today. Tessa, welcome to the Chopped podcast.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited, Marley.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to get a star for like the most regular visitor on the show. But you know, today we have a really special topic, and that is the Food Blog Success Summit, because as people know, we've been kind of gearing up for this, and it actually happened on October 15th, and you were there. Mm-hmm. And on our panel, we had myself, you, and Catherine Taylor with the site Cookie and Kate.
Yes, it was so much fun.
It really was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so fun to meet. Obviously, it's always fun to meet bloggers in person that you've only seen online. But I think that we all just came together in a really cool, open way, and people got a lot of awesome feedback, and everyone was able to be in a room with the goal of improving, and everyone walked away with something that they could do to improve their blog and a new perspective, or maybe even a whole new direction. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it was actually some great learning opportunities for everybody, because I think, you know, even us on the panel, I came back with a few things that I know I want to change right away. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that just speaks to getting feedback from someone else, because you can know everything there is about blogging, but it's hard to apply things to yourself sometimes, or maybe it's hard to view your own work from an outside perspective, or maybe you're just not looking. Like, for example, I didn't realize something on my site wasn't working properly on mobile the other day until someone else told me, and that's because I'm never on on my site on mobile. And it's just a reminder to constantly be looking at what you're doing and getting feedback and finding ways you can make improvements.
Love that. And in fact, I think right before we did the Food Blog Success Summit, I sent out one of those word quotes on the ChoppedCon Instagram account. And it basically says, feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Yes, I loved that.
Yeah, I like that too. And I think it's so important. It's like, it's easy to kind of put up, I don't know, defense mechanisms, because, you just want to hear all this great stuff and it starts to get addictive after a while. But you really, the more you can kind of let your guard down and get that kind of feedback, I think it really does make a big difference.
Yeah, and this is something I addressed in the Food Blog Success Summit, was actually viewing your blog as kind of a separate entity from yourself, instead of viewing it as a part of you or what defines you, because it's an important part of your life, but if you have such an emotional connection to it, it can be really difficult to see things without bias, and to hear feedback, to hear even criticism, and to find ways to make improvements instead of getting defensive or upset or let it ruin your day.
Wow, I think that's interesting from a couple of different perspectives, because first of all, like you just said, that, just not to take things so personally, but also I've noticed a trend as I've begun interviewing, some successful food bloggers for the podcast. And one thing I've noticed is that they all started their food blog as just like, I'm sharing these recipes with my friends or with my family. They weren't really taking themselves very seriously.
Yeah, and it was for fun. And It was because of a passion that they had. And I think that if you kind of remember, sometimes it can get really stressful. It can be overwhelming. And even I have to wake up sometimes and remind myself, hey, I'm doing this because I love it. Like, this is awesome. Remember, like, my old job that I hated, and now I get to do this every day. So let me forget about that mean comment or the fact that I can't get this piece of tech to work right now, and just enjoy the fact that I have made this incredible thing that exists.
Yeah, that's so good. That's such, that's like quotable right there. So let's talk a little bit about what happened during the day, so everybody can kind of get a good idea of what actually did happen. And we had probably, what do you think, around 20 to 25 people that were there? Yeah,
it was an intimate group, which made it, I think, really nice. It was almost like one of my favorite classrooms in college had the kind of semicircle seating where everyone was on the same kind of level, and everyone could see each other and interact and talk openly. And it was really nice in that regard, I think.
Yeah, I liked that too. And so we were all kind of right there together. But we started with you giving a brief, presentation about the importance of feedback. And I thought it was so good. It was really valuable content that you had.
Oh, thank you. It was easy to write because it's just things that I've experienced myself and I've seen other bloggers experience, and creating a blog that's a full-time business, it's stuff that you kind of realize you have to do, even if maybe you don't want to. It's kind of like when you open your checkbook and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to like that number in there, but I know I have to do it.
Yes.
So it's just having that little bit of extra discipline to take the feedback and to actually implement it. That's the most important part.
And I think you have a unique perspective, because not only do you have your own blog, but you have the Food Blog Academy, where you have people who are members of your site that basically are there because they want to improve their sites as well.
Yeah, and actually when I first launched at the beginning of 2015, a little extra bonus I offered was one-on-one kind of like support sessions, and they ended up turning into feedback sessions. I would pull up a website, someone's blog, and immediately a few things would come to mind or jump out to me in ways that could be improved or could be clarified or made easier or better, whatever it was. And I would mention that, and that just became kind of how these sessions evolved. And they were so helpful. And it was helpful to me even to kind of look at things in a more organized manner instead of like, oh, pretty, oh, fun, right. and start to see the kind of the things that a lot of us can improve on, maybe areas that a lot of us do well or don't do well. And it's something that we can all benefit from.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, I thought I would point out to everybody listening that we actually used your critique pages from the Food Blog Academy as the template of our critiques of the blogs that were there, and volunteered to be a part of the hot seat at the Food Blog Success Summit.
Yeah, I liked having a more regimented approach, because it can be easy to what I think is important with feedback is to take it for what it's worth. Obviously, everyone has a subjective opinion, and one person might like something, another person might not. But if you have something that is kind of like item by item, this is how your SEO looks, this is how legible your site is, this is how usable your recipe index is, things like that, it makes it easier to accept that kind of feedback because everyone has to deal with these elements of our blogs.
Right. That's such a good point. And then that's just like one more thing to help you not take things personally. It's really about, I don't know, like how is your about page written? Is it, because we've seen these trends and this really works well, or how are you labeling your photos? Those are just, it kind of makes it more like a tick list and less like, oh, I'm a mess. I screwed up on this,
Yeah, exactly.
So overall, we had 6 blogs that volunteered, I should say 6 bloggers that volunteered to be on the hot seat. And I'm so impressed by them because, that takes some guts to be the first ones to do it. And I think they did a great job.
Absolutely. It's slightly terrifying to put yourself out there in person in a group. And I was so happy for the people who did, because I think they ended up getting huge methods of improvement that they can implement over the coming months. And everyone who was on the hot seat said that they were so happy they did it. And, we were just talking that everyone who didn't participate on the hot seat came up to us after and said, oh, I so regret not being on the hot seat. Yeah. Can I come back next year and do it?
Yes, I heard that too. I heard several people, I think they were kind of scared about the idea of it. But then when they saw how well it went, they were like, I wanted to be on the hot seat.
I know. And it's nice because we have, the blogging community is so close-knit and it's so supportive for the most part. There's always going to be bad apples, but for the most part, in my experience, it's just an incredible community. And if everyone can come together in a way that's supportive, then the feedback you get, it's not going to be hurtful or it's not going to upset you. It's going to be helpful and you'll be happy you got it.
That's right. And I felt like we also, from our panel, we had 3 different, perspectives. I think Catherine has more, she really likes the SEO side and the technical things. And then, you were there definitely with your perspective of having seen a bunch of sites and the things to look for and actually having created the document that we use as a guide. And then, I was there and Sean was there, my husband, and also just, and then what I thought was very cool was, just the fact that people in the audience, are people who were just there for Food Blog Success Summit started volunteering ideas as well. So it just turned into this one big, I guess you'd call that a mastermind session for the people on the hot seat.
Yes, it was so cool to watch unfold. And I loved all of the advice and tips. And we even got some copywriting advice as well from members of the summit. And everyone had something to contribute. We all have something to learn. We all have things that we're good at. And if we all can come together and, raise each other up in that way, it's awesome.
Yeah. And just to let everybody in on what happened, we actually had one blog that we thought had some really good information on their site, but we felt like they needed a tagline to kind of help define what their site was really about for the reader. And there was a member at the Food Blog Success Summit who was just sitting there, and she just came this wonderful idea for a tagline, and we all applauded. It was just so good.
I know, it was so good. None of us could think of anything. No one else in the audience, the group could think of anything. And then she just whipped it out. And that's going to be a huge thing for that blogger who gets to put that tagline on her site, because it makes it professional. It makes it so that when people stumble across their site, they feel like she's talking right to them, like that blogger gets them. And you just get instant fans if you can communicate in a clear and effective way what the benefit is of your blog and following it.
Yeah, that's right. So I thought it would be kind of nice today if we could go over maybe like 4 or 5 different things that we noticed that were trends throughout the 6 bloggers who were there and their sites. And we're not going to go into specific names of sites or anything like that, but we will tell you that this group had such a great energy, and we're definitely going to get together via webinar probably in about 4 or 5 months just to help with, not accountability, but maybe accountability. And just, everybody knows that we'll meet again and we'll get some feedback from everybody how it went for them. So it was a great session, but like I say, I thought it would be kind of cool for the people in the Chopped podcast audience to kind of get an idea of what maybe were the top 5 or 6 things that we saw as trends.
Yeah, it was funny because there were some common themes, even though we had bloggers that ranged from newbies to seasoned bloggers who had been doing it for years. We had all different niches, all different types of blogs, all walks of life, and yet we found these kind of common things that were kept popping up throughout the entire session.
Yeah, definitely. And the one that comes to mind just right off the top of my head is really navigation focused. And it really came down to where that search button ended up being on most sites.
Yes, that was the first thing I wrote down. I was trying to think of some common threads that we found. And it seemed a lot of people had a search bar. Some people, I mean, one or two I don't even think had a search bar for whatever reason. But they were pushed down below everything on the sidebar to the point where it was practically invisible.
Yeah. So then the user is searching for the search button.
Yeah, exactly. And, in our day and age with instant gratification, someone's going to click away before they spend too much time hunting something down.
Right. And if I go to a site and I know, or maybe I usually know what I'm looking for when I go to a site. So being able to identify that search bar is so important.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about heat maps in regards to things like this, and that you can install a simple line of code from websites like SumoMe or Hotjar, and I even believe Google Analytics has some heat map technology that allows you to see where your users are most interacting with your homepage on your site. And if, for example, on my site, my sidebar is at the very top right-hand side of my sidebar, and it actually will probably change because I'm doing a new site design, but I can look at my heat map and see that search bar is red hot. Like, so many people immediately zip over to the search bar because most people have something in the back of their mind that they've been trying to find. And if the search bar isn't very obvious, then you're going to lose people who just needed to find that one thing.
I'd be curious to know if you move that search bar, if that's where the heat, I mean, in other words, is like that just prime real estate on every blog, or is it because that's where the search button was?
Well, I think it's just people come maybe to expect the search bar to be there.
Right. Yeah.
But the other thing is like maybe finding other ways to make recipe search just more functional and easy for your audience. My new site design has this incredible recipe search functionality built right into the homepage. I'm so excited for that to come out because I get emails constantly from readers saying, hey, do you have this recipe or that recipe? I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, you couldn't find it? What's wrong with you? And then I realized, well, it's not what's wrong with you. It's what's wrong with my site. It's not functioning in some way that my audience needs it to.
Right. And so just being aware of that, that's where I think tools like you were saying, SumoMe, or is it Hotjar?
Hotjar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They really can add a lot. It just gives you important information that you can use not only for determining where you put functionality on your site, but also like maybe where you want to put your ads. That stuff matters.
Yeah, and you can kind of see what's working and what's not working. And if you change something, you can get that feedback like we were just talking about. And both those tools have free versions. And so it's not even a financial commitment. It's as simple as just like installing the code and then actually keeping track of your site's performance and how it's working.
Yeah, exactly. So another trend that I noticed that I thought seemed really important was some of the bloggers had trouble identifying their big why. Why are they blogging? And in fact, one of the bloggers we talked to looked like she was trying to expand her topic area. And what we actually suggested was for her to narrow in on her topic area even more strongly. In other words, to really own that topic area. And I think she saw the passion in that as well by the time we were done.
Oh, for sure. I think a lot of us think the grass is always greener on someone else's side. And maybe if we start to talk about this or that, or start to include this, and it kind of goes away from the main core niche or topic or whatever it is that you focus on, not only do you maybe start to confuse your audience or turn away people, but you probably haven't capitalized on that one topic that you started your blog for in the first place anyways. And if you don't have a huge library of recipes, resources, videos, guides, downloads, lead magnets for your email list, if you don't have all that stuff for that one niche, then you're probably not ready to expand to anything else anyways. And what you want is for people to see you, see your blog, see your logo, and immediately know that you are the expert in whatever. And if you can kind of create that kind of brand consistency, it's going to make it so much easier to grow a loyal following.
That's such a great tip. And I totally get it, Tessa. I don't know about you, but like sometimes I get bored. Like I feel like, and maybe it's just, the allure of writing about something different. And in reality, you're right. You need to, if your site is not the go-to source for your topic area, you probably have more to do in that area.
Yeah, and I think it requires a bit of discipline because we can feel like we're maybe stuck in a rut or we don't want to put these limitations on ourselves or whatever. But I actually often think that in constraining yourself, you find more ways to be creative. If you give an artist $1 million and all the tools in the world to create some beautiful masterpiece, that artist is going to be completely overwhelmed and crippled by overwhelm. And I think when someone is faced with a challenge or faced with limitations, the creativity and innovation that comes out of that is always so much more impressive.
That's so true. And so what do you think there are some ideas for bloggers who find themselves kind of stymied or, bored? I mean, one idea that comes to mind would be to actually go out and talk to people about your topic area and just see what questions they have.
Yes, absolutely. Talk to people who are interested in it that you know personally. Have an actual one-on-one conversation. You can survey your audience. You can even look maybe at the existing products that exist in the marketplace related to your topic. Go look at the cookbooks on Amazon. Read the reviews. Go look at the negative reviews, and maybe you'll find a space where there's a gap to be filled and you can offer something that people are wanting but isn't maybe out there in exactly the way they need it.
Yeah. That's really good, really helpful information. I think kind of like looking at your site through fresh eyes and seeing what resources your readers might need that you're not providing.
Yeah, and maybe even how you can provide it. There's so many different things that you can be working on, not just the content, but how it's offered, new ways to offer it. Maybe that means a new media platform like ebooks or cookbooks or videos or step-by-step photos. Like, just always be thinking of ways that you can offer more value and solve the core problem that your audience has. If you're always thinking that way, you really can't run out of ideas.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any trends that come to mind for you, Tessa, as far as today we're concerned?
Yeah, there was one trend that a few bloggers seemed to have a little bit of room for improvement, and that was making sure everything on your site, especially core real estate areas like your home page, your sidebar, your recipe index, your about page, that those are all filled with only things that benefit your audience, only things that your audience would be interested in, that they would gain value from, and that they would be happy to see. And so that might mean removing the food gawker badge from your sidebar. That might mean removing, pictures of, I don't know. It depends completely on your audience, but we kind of saw a few people taking up valuable real estate with things that weren't really beneficial to the reader, or even like, for example, having archived dates available in the recipe index as opposed to ingredients or categories or prep time. Like, is someone really going to look at your recipe index and want to know exactly what you posted on June 15, 2013? Or would they be more interested in seeing all the recipes that require less than 30 minutes prep time? Just got to be thinking, put yourself into your reader's shoes and think, is this valuable? Is this valuable? Is this helpful on every little element of your site?
Yeah, I think that food blogger badge is a great example of things that other food bloggers would pick up on for sure, but probably our readers would not.
Yeah, and I actually wrote an entire post on my site Handle the Heat while I was launching Food Blog Academy about why I stopped blogging for other bloggers.
I remember that post.
And it was like a revelation when I started to realize the majority of my readers are not bloggers. I would say probably less than 10% are bloggers. And I don't need to be doing things to please other bloggers. As long as I'm pleasing my audience and myself, then if another blogger doesn't like what I'm doing or whatever, that's totally fine.
But it's so easy for that to slip into our thinking without even noticing that it's happening,
I know. And the thing to remember just in general is that beyond bloggers, most people aren't paying that much attention to you. And so thinking so hard and stressing yourself out about Pinterest collage images.
Yes.
Should I or shouldn't I? Or how many times should I post a week? Or am I posting too much or too little to Instagram? Like, as long as you're thinking in terms of your audience and what would benefit them, as opposed to the judgment that might be passed by another blogger, it relieves a huge amount of stress and anxiety and burden. But it just improves your blog as a business altogether.
It's so true. And I do feel like, photography could be a great example of that I can get completely stressed out, if I don't get the exact shot that I'm looking for, or, like I might spend an hour editing a certain thing on a photo, and it's probably things that our audiences are not going to pay that much attention to.
Exactly. Like we were just talking about the sound quality of your podcast. And I always think it sounds great, but you might notice these little things that the majority of Chopped listeners would never notice. Yeah. And, how much time is it worth to spend on something that most people won't notice? And that's precious time you could be spending on maybe something else that they would notice.
Thank you for that feedback, Tessa. I needed that. Yes, it is so easy to find ourselves just kind of launched into some kind of detail like that. And I almost think that's actually a form of, who is that? Steve Pressfield, who talks about resistance. Yes, yeah. It can almost turn into a form of resistance because you're using that as a way of avoiding moving on to some of the things that you should be doing.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Anything else that you see as a trend from the day?
No, the other thing I wrote, which we already talked about, was making sure you stick to your topic. I mean, it's okay to have posts here and there that maybe explore other areas or things like that, but as long as people can come to your site and know exactly what to expect and know what the value of your site is to their life, then I think you're good. But if there's any confusion or misunderstanding, or if you're getting emails from people that it seems they don't get what you're all about, then that just means you've got to find better ways to communicate, whether that's your tagline, the design of your logo, the little about blurb in your sidebar. Everything like that really speaks to an audience person very quickly. And if that's not all cohesive and easy to understand, then it's going to be difficult for you to grow your blog in a meaningful way.
Exactly. And that's the only other thing I was going to point out was I did think that we noticed a trend in about pages that oftentimes they're written from, and I'm guilty of this myself, they're written from our perspective and maybe not from the perspective of the reader. Of course, they want to know about you as the writer, but I think they want to know about you from the perspective of what can you do for me?
Yes, exactly. What I like to do is, and what we were suggesting to a lot of people in the summit, was to make sure that when someone hits your about page, the first bit of information they get, whether it's a paragraph or bullet points or whatever what you want to write, make sure that it's targeted directly to your reader. Tell them they're in the right place if they need this, that, or this. Here are my top 10 recipes. Here's a resource guide. Here's what I'm an expert in. Here's what you can expect. And then after you've kind of cleared that up, then maybe you can talk about you and your story or your biography or why you started the blog or pictures of your family or whatever. But I think this is another area where we look at it from our perspective, and we hear other bloggers talk about how much they love to read about pages and learn more about the blogger. But unfortunately, the majority of casual readers want to know first if this is worth their time. And then maybe once they're better invested because it's a good fit for what they're looking for, then they'll be more interested in reading about you.
And that's the cool thing, is if they actually then do scroll down the page, that's a very interested reader. You really grab their attention if, you get them to scroll down the page.
Yes, definitely. And, all the tips and advice that we give today, it may not be applicable to everyone. And if you know your style and your goals and everything, and if something doesn't fit, that's perfectly fine. But what we found a lot is people had these super duper long about pages with super long paragraphs. Yeah. It was like reading, fiction. It was like reading a book. And for blogging, we want stuff to be easily consumed, easily read. We want headlines, bullets, short paragraphs, things that make the content on a screen easier to consume.
Right. And in fact, one of our bloggers had her first paragraph, or her first sentence on her opening paragraph was so good, we suggested that she actually create it as its own paragraph, because sometimes, having just a line of text really calls it out and makes your reader pay attention to it even more.
Yes, exactly. Find those bits of text
Yeah.
that break it up, but also give a reader like a better idea of what's coming next or what the main point is.
Yes, this is not English 101. This is blog writing.
I know, and it's hard to remember that. It's hard to remember, you don't have to use all of those formal rules that you did in English class. And in fact, being more personable and speaking or writing the way you speak, and it doesn't matter if you start a sentence with and or end it
I know, I do that all the time.
like, unless you're someone who speaks very formally naturally and that's part of your personal style, but for most of us that's not the case.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we first moved to this house last year, we met the neighbors across the street, and she asked what I did, and I told her about my blog, and then I asked what she did, and she told me that she's an English professor. And I was like, oh no, don't go to my site.
But you know what's funny about that? Because I actually stay in touch with one of my English teachers, and they understand that every piece of media requires a different style of writing. And the way you'd write an essay versus the way you'd write a poem versus the way you'd write a magazine column, it's all different. And so you have to cater to the platform and to your audience. And if you can't easily read something on your phone because it's so long and wordy, then that's probably a good sign you need to shorten it or make it more legible.
That's a very good point. I mean, we really should be writing to in a way that our audience can comprehend what we're, in fact, most of us have the Yoast SEO plugin, and it'll actually give you a score about, how readable your content is. And I mean, almost every time I check that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It's a good habit to keep to check all of the things that they touch on in that plugin, because it also tells you like the word length and maybe if it's too short or too long for your entire post. They say the what is it called? Like the reading test, and I actually think there's a link so you can better understand why you got the score you got. And maybe it's as simple as using a few extra headlines or bullets or breaking up some long paragraphs or breaking down longer sentences.
Yeah, and it's not as if we're trying to dumb down our content. Again, it's just trying to make it readable and comprehensible. Like you and I talked about earlier, a lot of our audiences may be actually accessing our content from their iPhone. And a lot of people don't want to scroll through a lot of, long sentences and things like that. I just think it makes it easier for them to read it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think that kind of is a nice summary. And in fact, I'll put the show notes page up with all of these as well. And I think we're starting to get some of the people who have participated write some summaries as well. So I'll include links to their posts too.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I think hopefully this way everybody gets a good idea about Food Blog Success Summit. And, maybe next year when we do it again, they'll want to come too.
Yes. And volunteer for the hot seat. It's fun. We promise.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who was in the hot seat regretted it.
No, not at all. It's such a cool experience. I don't think there's really anything like this where you can get open, honest, usable feedback that you can actually take action on. It's not super vague or overwhelming, and really start to make improvements. And it doesn't matter what your goals are, because we took every member who participated in the hot seat and we looked at them as an individual. We got a summary of who they are, why they started, what their goals are, where they want to take their blog, and we kind of catered our feedback to that and knowing that person as an individual. And so it doesn't matter where you come from or where you're trying to go. We can always, everyone can find ways to give you helpful feedback.
Yeah, that's a good point. And another thing I was going to tell everybody is that we also had some people making changes right there on the spot, because by the next day, I had somebody come up to me and say, hey, look what I already made some changes to my site based on the feedback I got yesterday. Yeah,
it was really cool. Yes. I had some people come up to me with their laptops the next day and they're like, so what do you think? I changed it.
And it looked dramatically different, didn't it?
Yes. It was so cool. And it's so cool to be in an environment like that, because I think it's so much more motivating and inspiring than maybe reading an article about why you should break up your about page into shorter sentences or whatever.
I know.
Because, it's just more easy to just put it all into action.
It's so true. And I am just not one of those kind of learners. I can listen to people talk about that kind of stuff all day long and it just like right over my head. But then we're in a situation like that. And even just pointing that out to other people, I realized, oh yeah, I could add some bullets to my about page, or I can do these things too. So it feels good to hear that.
It is. And it's funny because I was just talking about how we individualized all the feedback, but in the same vein, a lot of the feedback we gave could be applied to so many people who are sitting there, maybe not on the hot seat, because there are just areas like these common themes that we found that if we go look at our own sites, a lot of us could probably find ways to improve them.
Yeah, it was a great day. And I'm so glad that you were able to be there and Catherine was able to be there to, share with everybody and give your experience and feedback too.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and I really can't wait to have our webinar and catch up with everyone who participated and see how they have gotten along. And I just can't wait also for the next time we host another Food Blog Success Summit.
I know, and I guess we'll just have to keep everybody on pins and needles about when the next one's going to be, do you think?
Yeah, because I think we have some other ideas cooking, right?
I think we do. So everybody has to stay tuned.
Yes. Listen up. Listen to every podcast. You might miss it.
So Tessa, you got anything exciting that you can talk about that's coming up for you as far as, Food Blog Academy or anything like that?
Yeah, so the start of 2016, I will slowly be releasing what I'm calling Food Blog Academy 2.0. And so the first year of its existence was so much fun. It was so fun to help other bloggers with all the things that I've been able to learn throughout my years blogging, and to kind of start this little community of people who really want to take their blog to the next level and turn it into a job and actually start to make money from it and treat it like a business. And so Food Blog Academy 2.0 is just me going back with all the feedback and all of the things that I learned along the way, and teaching a group of bloggers and making everything that much better, more easy to implement, and just fun ways that I can add more value to it. So I'm really excited about that.
That is very exciting. I think you mentioned something about a new cookbook coming out in December. Is that right?
So December, it's my new ebook. It'll be Tessa's Christmas Cookies, and actually, as soon as we finish recording this episode, I have to go back and start re-editing my sales page. It's a whole process, but it'll be my second ebook for the year, and having a product that I created, I own that income stream. I'm not reliant completely on my traffic or on sponsors or affiliate marketing or anything like that. Has been just incredible, and I would highly recommend to anyone who's serious about making money from their blog to start to find ways to rely less on income streams that you have no control over, and start to find ways to create your own products or offerings that not only give incredible value to your audience, but allow you to make money independently.
Oh, that's great advice. I know it's something that everybody needs to consider, especially as, we know that there are changes to Facebook algorithms and Pinterest algorithms. And it's like your traffic can seem so, dependent on all those kinds of things, or maybe not, but still, I think having more things that you can be in control of like that is really an important business model for the future.
Yes, absolutely. And although obviously your sales will increase if you're selling a product, if you have more traffic, it's not completely connected and tied in an unbreakable way like ads are. And it takes that stress, and that stress of having to watch your page views every day is so crippling creatively and emotionally. And we don't want anyone to be, addicted to their Google Analytics. We want to have ways that we can be creative and enjoy our businesses.
Well, and it's like you said earlier on. I mean, we are creating this, we're actually starting these are our own businesses, basically. That's one of the things I thought was the theme of Food Blog Success Summit as well, is that we are business owners. And as business owners, it seems like we would want to create the kind of environment and the kind of life that we're looking for, not just one where we're stuck behind a desk 24/7 or, on social media all the time or all that stuff.
Exactly. And you put into it what you want to get out of it. And so everyone doesn't have the same vision for themselves or what they want for their life or their business or how much time they want to spend on it. And so it's really my favorite part, to be able to set things up in ways that give you what you want. And it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing, because if it's giving you what you want, then you're good. Exactly.
That's wonderful. Well, Tessa, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Marley. It's always so much fun to be here.
Thanks to Tessa Arias for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you were busy running around and couldn't jot down something important, don't worry. We took the notes for you. Just head on over to choppedcon.com, where I put up links for each show, including the stuff we talked about today, and more information about our guests. I hope you're loving the Chopped Podcast. If so, it would mean the world to me if you'd head over to iTunes or Stitcher and give it a review. You can do that right now. Also, you can spread the word about the Chopped Podcast using @ChoppedCon on Twitter or Instagram, or even Facebook. Your shout-outs really mean a lot. You inspire me, so I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.